Hi, my name is Ollie. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Nanyang Learning Hub in Singapore on behalf of Heatherwick Studio. Heatherwick Studio is in London, and it's headed by Thomas Heatherwick, who's not an architect, he's actually an artist. I'm an architect, I'm from Denmark, and the project was in Singapore, and this is an old slideshow because we're not here. But it's in the east end of Singapore, it's Nanyang Technological University, and this is the site by Kento Tangi. That was built in the 80s, and this is an amazing university. But the brief in this competition was to create architecture which is slightly different to the award-winning Kento Tangi architecture from the 80s, where you've got long corridors and square classrooms where you sit and learn master classes. You sit in a row and you listen. So the new way of teaching in many parts of the world, and in Singapore now as well, was to work in groups where the students would work as a team, and the professor would be more of a facilitator, advising and stepping in when needed. And all the teams would have a computer and a laptop and iPads and everything. It's super high tech, and it's about networking and a different way of working. So what we thought was, why have a square classroom if you're not sitting in rows anymore? So we created not circular but rounded classrooms, so where you sit around round tables, and each of you have a screen on the wall here. Now, we've got 66 classrooms, and they're all different. You've got toilets, and we've got 4 cores, which is basically like the legs of this building, sideways stability, and of course access. I'll get back to them. Then you've got the internal logistics. So you enter the classrooms via this atrium, and all of the classrooms are facing the atrium. Now the idea is that because it's Singapore and we've got a heat problem, the facade is not very open, but the internal part of the classrooms are open towards each other. Again, this is about connectivity between the students and networking, which is kind of the way, I'm not saying it's a new way of studying, but it's a part of it for all of us. It's a very democratic building because you can enter it from all sides and leave it from all sides. And if we go up the building, you can see the classroom changes slowly. They step out, and that's to prevent heat gain. I'll get back to that, in through the windows. On the 6th floor, you've got a lecture hall and different types of libraries. And then we got roof terraces on 7 and 8. Now this was what this competition looked like in 2012, and we all, well, some people thought that's a bit much, and how are we going to do this? But we won the competition, so now it was time to build it. This was the atrium, which is as green as possible, and that's of course something we had to fight for. And because it has to be low maintenance as well. But this is a film to just give you an idea of the shapes before I get into more detail. So I spent 4 years, more or less, on this building site. I was mostly in London though, but I was in Singapore every month. And we're now entering the atrium. The atrium is not kind of straight up. It's shaped a little bit maybe like an egg. So that means that the columns are slanting at different angles. And now we're going into one of the 66 classrooms. And what I'm going to tell you about now is the air conditioning system, or the lack of it, because we were not interested in just having a lot of standard air conditioning systems that use a lot of energy. We just won, not won a battle, but we spend a lot of time convincing people that the main atrium should be naturally ventilated, because that was 70% of the building that was supposed to be air conditioned, and we made that naturally ventilated. That's why the plan looked a little bit like 12 towers. So you had air coming in through all the balconies from all sides. This is really important in Singapore because the humidity. It's always nice and warm, but it can get way too humid. So this tower plan was part of that. Now in the classroom, here we are in the corridor. You can see these machines at high level here. They are the induction system. Now, the induction system means that we got all the walls are hollow, 150 millimeters exactly is the gap. And then you have a small pipe up here, with cold water, like a radiator, just cooling. So there's no motors, there's no engines, anything pumping air around. Air gets a little bit colder here, just 8 degrees, and then it falls automatically and goes to the nearest point, which is hot, which is you and me, and then it heats up and goes back. And this saves a lot of energy. And of course, we had to do a lot of tests to see if it works. The building was completed March last year, so it's been in use for a year now, and it works really well. This is just detail. And you can see here how you've got a gap, 150 millimeters as well, along the floor. This is where the air comes out. Okay, now here we are back at the plan, and as I mentioned before, because of the cross ventilation in the atrium, the naturally ventilated atrium, it's very important that you've got air going straight through this building, more or less at all time. And again, it was completed a year ago, so I've been there a few times, and it's quite pleasant. And this is just a diagram showing the same. Now, with the structure, the columns was something interesting to us because we were not interested in just having a straight atrium. We would like an atrium where most people could see each other and something that kind of opened up. So that meant that the columns couldn't be straight either, of course. Well, when we then look at the facade here we are stepping in a bit, depends on where you cut the section. That's to prevent sun coming into the windows, which are at high level. The windows are quite small because you actually don't want sun to come in, but of course you want the open classroom. So between 40 and 60% of the classroom is glazed but facing the atrium, which has got a roof light. So now the columns were a little bit difficult, and the engineer in Singapore was not sure how to do it. So we asked Arab in London to give us a hand, and they showed us how it was possible. And of course it's not straightforward, but that's why we're here. So we had a test model done by the engineers, and then we went on site. And these are some of the first columns, and as you can see, there's also a pattern to it. This is at the top level, and the pattern is something I'll get back to, but it's made using foam liners because we didn't want to spend money. It's not a high budget project, it's quite a low budget. So we didn't want to spend money on cladding at all. There's no cladding. So instead we put rubber forms into the column formwork to create patterns, or to create some sort of sensibility, because due to something called the buildability score in Singapore, we ended up in a situation where the government kind of said to us, to do this building, it will all have to be concrete. Concrete facade, concrete columns, concrete slab. And we were not excited about this because there's many good concrete projects, as we've seen earlier today, but there's also a lot of concrete projects which are not this warm building that we want to create. So instead we worked with shape and tactility. So here we are trying to kind of simulate a pregnant belly, in a sense that that's something we all like to touch. I'm not sure that sounds a little bit, but people are actually stroking these columns because they got this softness to them, and because it's in situ formwork, it's extremely, it's a really nice finish as well. Here's the formwork with the rubber inlaid, and then we go on to the facade, where we got, it's a concrete facade as well, and we got 1,050 different panels. Originally, they were all unique because none of the curves are the same. But of course, we worked with that and worked with a local concrete specialist to develop a system. As much as this project is handmade, as you can still in Asia sometimes, it's also very high tech because we had to use scripting and different types of 3D software to generate these 1,050 different panels, which are all actually unique, and was drawn by a young man called Simon. Thank you, Simon. Here we can see how the panels are unique, because this one got a line going through here. We got 10 curvatures, and then it stops here. This one is a thinner part, and it stops here and carries on. And in that matter, we did a lot of facade studies. This is Thomas with the hair, and this is one of the facade studies. And the main thing, we asked the client, what is important for you when it comes to the facade? And he said, I got a very strong point on that. And we got a little bit worried. And he said, we cannot have pigeons sitting on the facade. So it's like, okay. So we designed a pigeon kind of safe facade with an angle that you can't sit on if you're a pigeon. And we did some tests, one-to-one. And here you can see how, again, we're not using cladding. This is the wall. And this is actually the outside 10 millimeters taken off the concrete instead of adding. So we use something called a retarder, where you kind of paint it on the formwork, and then 24 hours after you take off the formwork, you hose it down with water, and all the rest of the concrete is of course set, except from these 10 millimeters, and you can see the aggregates. And here you can see how we locally built these 1,050 facade panels with different inlays. So they are all unique, and you can see the curved formwork here. So you can adjust the formwork into 10 settings and thereby create these curves. So that was the facade. And now to the cores, because we have to have 4 stair cores for escape reasons and for structural reasons. But all the students would actually be using the lift instead of using the stair core, we realized. So we would like to work on this stair core, giving it something that might make people use it, get some exercise, use less electricity. So we worked with Italian artist Sara Fanelli, asked her to do 700 drawings that to her could have something to do with Singapore. I'm not going to go through all 700, but here are some of them. And we then took them into the computer, and together with her we made a piece of art which was 12 meters long by 4 meters. And again, using scripting, we created a 3D model which was 12 meters by 4 meters, and our computers nearly died. And out of that, we started cutting MDF formwork. Now, this formwork was used to pour rubber on, and again, this was a form liner that we put into the metal formwork. You can see the metal, this is already glued onto the metal formwork, which we put up and cast our core. The core is 600 millimeters thick, so this is load-bearing art. And it took us half a year from the first sketches and all the production of the drawings and so on, till we actually were able to take off this formwork and see if it worked. And we were really happy with the result. And of course, we've used pigment as well, as you can see, to do something with concrete that just gives it a bit of warmth, which is really important to us. And she put all kinds of statements in there, and there's a shooting star, I think it's a penguin. Next thing is the Atrium. Now, the Atrium is in situ cast as well, mainly because the contractor, we are not sure why, but the contractor said to us it's too difficult for us to do like standard panels and repeat them. It's better to build it in MDF and cast it. And we were quite happy to do that. We knew, of course, it would never be perfect, so we see it more as a story about how we built the project. So you can see here where the MDF stopped and started again, and here's a panel clearly, and it starts and stops. And actually, we asked in the drawings if we could have it fully rounded, which they said, of course you can. And then they created kind of a rounded piece of rubber, which was really thick. So they pushed that in. And instead of it being fully rounded, we had kind of a Victorian detail, which we actually thought was better than our design. So, so this is the atrium while it's being cast. And it's 8 stories. And as you can see, they're coming inwards. This is on the opening day. The lower bit is quite small, and then it comes out and goes back in again. And it's all basically to make people want to stay there and live there. And not live there, but it is open 24 hours. The idea is that the students can book a room in the evening and play guitar or study or whatever they like. And then during the day, you book a classroom by the hour, because there's 33,000 students in this campus, and they never really see each other because the architects are so far away from the art students, who are so far away from the chemistry students. So this is a hub in the sense that all the professors can book a classroom here, and thereby they might have a classroom, and next to them there's art students, next to them there's chemistry. This is where they meet, and this is where they train networking as well. And oddly enough, the Minister of Education also said that the fertility rate in Singapore is quite low. So it would be good if there was like places and corners where the students could meet. And we got lots of them. Now, here's a few photos of the atrium. And this was the competition back in 2011. And this is a photo from last year. So somehow we got quite close to it. And the last photo I'll show today later on shows that the greenery here, you can see that we've just planted. Singapore is so green, it's amazing to work with plants there. But as always, when you just plant it, it doesn't look like a jungle. But luckily it did later. So here's just a few photos. You can see how the building is stepping in so that you don't get much light directly in. And even though we did that, we've now had a few complaints that there's too much light in the classroom for the laptops. But I think this is the latest photo from March this year, where they just had an open house. People could come and visit it. And I think that was my last slide. Thank you.